Upon glancing at my phone, I noticed a staggering 13 missed calls, all originating from my persistent mother-in-law, Martha. Not again, I thought to myself. Just as I was contemplating this influx of calls, my phone vibrated once more. Answering the call, I was met with Martha's angered voice demanding, "Excuse me, isn't the allowance for this month $3,000 due?" "Excuse me?" I responded, trying to keep my composure. "Send the allowance. This month's payment hasn't been deposited yet." Martha raged on, completely indifferent to my circumstances and solely fixated on her own desires. Fed up with her lack of consideration, even in challenging situations, I reluctantly resorted to my last option. Pulling myself together, I blurted out, "Your son has passed away, so I can no longer send the allowance. My name is Jennifer Smith, 32 years old. I'm a busy working woman at a major financial firm and also a housewife." Reflecting on my past, I reminisced about meeting my beloved husband Mark 2 years ago. We connected through our shared hobbies, and our relationship blossomed quickly. Despite encountering no major quarrels, a significant issue arose in the form of Martha, my mother-in-law. Mark's father had passed away a few years ago, leaving Martha as his sole family. The trouble began when I visited Martha's home to introduce myself before our wedding. Martha greeted me with a displeased expression, remarking, "So, you're Mark's fiancée, huh?" "Yes, my name is Jennifer Miller." To my astonishment, she continued, "You're a rather plain girl. I wonder what Mark sees in you." Uncertain if she was joking or being serious, I was left in shock. Mark, noticing my discomfort, confronted his mother. "Hey, Mom, what's with the sudden harsh words? How can you say such things to the person I chose?" Martha responded, "I'm just trying to choose a suitable woman for you." An argument unfolded between mother and son, leaving the air heavy with tension during my first meeting with Martha. I found myself unable to intervene, even though the atmosphere remained awkward. Eventually, we managed to convey our intention to marry. As we were leaving, Martha called out to Mark, sounding somewhat disgruntled. "Mark, can I have a word? You're going to keep that promise after you get married, right?" "What promise?" Mark inquired. "You know, about the allowance." "Ah, that. Yes, I'll be sure to take care of that." "Can we not discuss it here, please?" Mark replied. While leaving, the tension between my husband and his mother lingered, and the air was thick with discomfort. In the car on the way home, I brought up the conversation Mark had with his mom. "Hey, Mark, about the conversation you had with your mom as we were leaving." "Yeah, I should have told you about it, Jennifer. I heard something about an allowance. After my dad passed away, I've been sending money to my mom every month." "How much?" I asked. $2,000. $2,000. I couldn't help but raise my voice in surprise. Mark sighed deeply and explained, "Actually, my mom has a debt from a casino a long time ago. She's still paying it off, and because her health isn't great these days, she spends a lot of time at home. But she still needs money to live on, right?" "But $2,000? Isn't that a bit too much? If I try to lower the amount, she keeps calling me over and over. And no matter what, a mother is still a mother. I worry about her living alone," Mark reasoned. I understood that Mark was genuinely devoted to his mother. Since his father passed away, Martha had been the only family he had left. Regardless of her character, she was still his beloved mother. 2 months after our wedding, during my lunch break, I received a call from Martha on my smartphone. When I answered, she began to speak in a cheerful tone. "Jennifer, long time no see. Can we chat for a bit?" "Yes. What can I do for you?" I asked. "Well, I was hoping you could start sending me money," Martha said. I was taken aback and struggled to find words. However, Martha seemed excited to continue the conversation. "You mentioned before that you're working for a financial company, right? That means you have a good salary, doesn't it?" "Not exactly." "What, are you lying to avoid giving me money?" "That's not what I mean," I replied. "Then what is it?" "But Martha, you're still receiving financial support from Mark, aren't you?" I asked. In defiance, Martha responded, "So what?" Jennifer sternly stated what she felt Martha was not appreciating. Martha, receiving $2,000 in monthly support is a big deal, and yet you're asking for more. Really? You think so? If you were to send me an additional $1,000, I could avoid burdening Mark. What do you mean by that? I asked. Well, I have Mark as a guarantor for my debts. If I fail to make payments, the debt collectors will go after him. Do you understand? Martha explained. But aren't you using part of Mark's $2,000 to pay back the debt? I inquired. I'm short. I haven't told Mark, but I have a significant amount of debt, Martha confessed. From her tone, it was apparent that this was a fact even her husband was unaware of. Having children in the future would increase our expenses. In addition to that, taking over Martha's debt was not an easy task. However, if Martha's payments fall behind and the debt falls onto Mark, the interest will likely have accumulated significantly by that time. If I refused to send money, it would eventually become a problem for my husband as well. Thinking along those lines, I reluctantly agreed to Martha's proposal. All right, I'll start sending you money. Really? Good, Jennifer. I knew you would say that. The total, with Mark's contribution, will be $3,000. But this means you can pay off your debt, right? Yes, of course. I should be able to pay it all off in about a year. You promise, right? You'll make sure to pay off all your debts. I get it. So I'll be expecting it from this month onwards. Martha concluded the call abruptly. Physical exhaustion from work combined with this emotional burden only added to my stress. $1,000 a month, that's going to be rough. But it's also to prevent future problems for us. After all, if Martha can't make a living, it will upset Mark as well. That night, I promptly reported the matter to my husband. He told me I didn't have to do this, but I had already given my word to Martha, and it was a decision made for our future well-being. Mark expressed his gratitude and understanding, even as he maintained a sorry expression throughout. Time flew by, and 2 years have passed since then. The financial aid we thought would end in a year is still ongoing, and even now, we are transferring $3,000 every month to Martha. What's more, about 2 months ago, Mark fell ill and has been unable to go to work. He's on sick leave, so he's receiving disability benefits, but it's a mere pittance compared to his previous salary. Last month, I managed to transfer $3,000 to Martha from my savings, but it would be very challenging if this situation continues. Unbelievably, Martha has not once come to visit her sick son. We have informed her of his hospitalization, but she doesn't show up to see him and only contacts me to ask, "You're still sending the money, right?" I was so furious that I decided to address the issue with Mark. Mark, listen, don't you think it's wrong that Martha is only concerned about money, even though you're in such a state? We need to think seriously about what to do going forward. Yeah, I've been thinking the same thing. I don't want to put more strain on you, Jennifer. This month, too, she's been bombarding me with calls and messages, asking if we've sent the money yet. Are you serious? How can she only think about money when her own son is sick? Mark expressed his anger towards his mother, his face slightly worn. Then, as if he had an idea, Mark exclaimed, "That's it," and wore a sly grin. What is it, Mark? Well, this is our last resort. I've come up with something good. For your mom. What? I was curious but cautious. Mark suggested a plan that I could never have imagined. Although it could be called inappropriate, it seemed to be the only way to make Martha understand. A few weeks later, Mark was discharged from the hospital. Martha didn't reply to any of our messages, so we didn't inform her about Mark's discharge. In the last 2 weeks, Martha had been relentlessly demanding money, displaying no concern for her son's well-being. While Mark and I were enjoying a cup of tea, a message came in on my phone. Upon checking, I found 13 missed calls from Martha again. As I thought, my phone vibrated again. It was another call from Martha. "Hello," I answered and turned on the speaker microphone so that Mark could hear. Martha started shouting right away. Listen, where's the $3,000 for this month? Excuse me, that's right. The money for this month hasn't been transferred yet, I replied. Do you realize Mark is now? I don't care if he's in the hospital or whatever. It's none of my business. You're working at a good place, right? You must have plenty of savings. Hurry up and transfer it here, Martha shouted angrily. Eventually, she said something unbelievable. Listen, since you married Mark, if he can't pay, you have to pay me. Understand? If you refuse, I'll make you the guarantor. Got it? At that moment, something inside me snapped. She was displaying her desires openly without considering our situation at all. I had reached my breaking point with her. She didn't even try to reflect on her own actions. Now, I had no choice but to resort to the last resort. I firmly declared into my smartphone, Mark has passed away. I can't send you any more money. At these words, Martha blurted out in bafflement, what? Yes, this was the last resort that my husband suggested. Lie to Martha about Mark's death and observe her reaction. If she showed any sign of sadness, if she reflected on her behavior and apologized, we would continue to support her financially. But if she didn't reflect, if she demanded money, we would sever ties completely. Deep down, I knew it was time to confront Martha's blatant disregard for the well-being of her own family. I believed that even someone as money-driven as Martha would deeply reflect on her actions upon hearing that her own son had passed away. However, the very next moment, Martha burst into loud laughter. What's so funny? I questioned. Well, isn't it obvious? If Mark is dead, that means his inheritance will be distributed to me too. Excuse me, I've been looking into it since I heard that Mark was sick. Listen here, 2/3 of Mark's assets are yours, but 1/3 is mine. I was at a loss for words. I never anticipated that when she first heard her son was sick, she wouldn't look into treatment, but into how the inheritance would be divided. My anger surpassed. I was simply dumbfounded. My husband seemed to feel the same way, and as our eyes met, he slowly nodded. This was the signal to continue with the plan. Once again, I said to Martha in a strong tone, Martha, did you hear what I said? Mark is dead. I heard. What about it? Aren't you sad your own son passed away before you? Martha replied nonchalantly, you just make sure to send me some. I won't let you get away with not doing it. With a click, the phone line was cut off, and a dial tone echoed. I glanced at my husband and saw that he was shaking, his face red with anger. Mark, are you okay? I asked. My husband looked into my eyes and said, I'm cutting ties with her. She'll likely come here eventually, demanding money. Let's wait until then, okay? But are you really okay with this, cutting off ties just like that? Yeah, I have no regrets. After that call, she's no mother. My husband's eyes were filled with hatred, and I felt the same way. A person who only thinks about money over her own son's life is not family to me. A few days later, as expected, Martha came to our house. For the time being, I decided to hide my husband in the next room and deal with Martha myself. Martha approached me with a face like a demon. Hey, give me Mark's inheritance right now. Again with that? Anything else to say? He's already dead, isn't he? It's pointless to say anything now. Yet you never even visited him. What are you saying? Are you really his mother? You're so annoying. Give me the inheritance right away. I don't mind getting the lawyer. Speaking more would be a waste of time. Just as I thought that, my husband emerged from the next room. Seeing him, Martha let out a startled gasp as if she had seen a ghost. Mark, why weren't you dead? Long time no see, Mom. Sorry, but the news about my death was a lie. A lie? How could you be so disrespectful? I wanted to confirm your true nature, Mom. I was curious about how you'd handle the allowance if your son died. But you turned out to be a gold digger, just as I suspected. I understood perfectly. What? How dare you call your mother a gold digger? Silence. I'm cutting ties with a toxic parent like you. My husband's angry shouts left Martha with her mouth agape. She couldn't come to terms with the fact that her own son was severing ties with her. "What does this mean, Mark?" she stammered. "It means exactly what I said. I can't consider someone like you as my mother. No way." "What about the allowance? Do you really think I would? You're on your own with the debts. We're moving. Wait, please. If you do that, what about my living expenses?" Teary-eyed and pleading, Martha reached out to my husband. He forcefully shook off her hand, looked at her coldly, and said, "I don't care about your living expenses. You have been living off us without even a single apology. I really understand your despicable nature now. Don't you dare show up in front of us again." "No, wait, Mark. Are you going to abandon your mother?" Ignoring her words, my husband grabbed Martha's arm and dragged her to the front door. He threw her shoes and bag outside and chased Martha out of the house. Martha made a fuss outside for a while but disappeared after a bit, perhaps unable to withstand the eyes of the neighbors. She tried contacting us multiple times, but we ignored all of her attempts. We set Martha's number to be automatically rejected, and we finished moving. Regarding the matter of co-signing for the debts, it became invalid since Martha had made Mark the co-signer without his consent, and therefore he was not responsible. Without the allowance from us, Martha seemed to be leading a miserable life. It's only natural, considering she had been using the allowance for her gambling habits instead of paying off her debts. She still had a mountain of debts and was chased by debt collectors every day. Unable to gamble anymore, she seems to be working from dawn to dusk. For the foreseeable future, it's unlikely that she will be able to pay off her debts completely. She will have to keep working until she is unable to move. This is entirely her own doing. As for us, we are spending fulfilling days in our new home. My husband's condition has stabilized, and he has returned to work. After some time, there's a new life growing in my belly. We're going to have an additional member in our family next year. From now on, we want to spend happy days as a family of 3.